But the central question, and now we get a chance to just each of us to speak for no more than 1 minute to explain whether the problem with Nigeria is the people of Nigeria or the structure of Nigeria. 1 minute, and we're keeping time. And you watch Bonny, who's got the Fatherland logo above his head. When you hit your 1 minute point, he will display that red folder to signal time up. So make your comments concise and to the point. Please do not start with honorable this and recognizing this in the house, etc., etc. Could I also advise that if you need to pick your nose at any time, just turn your camera off. And if you need to pass wind, please make sure you mute yourself. But otherwise, everything is permissible. Herbert.
I think the question, to me, it does start with the people, because everything must begin with the people, although the structure is also a factor.
Can we have McDonald?
Well, as you have seen from my answer, I also indicated that the problem with Nigeria is the people. But as I was trying to say, when I gave that answer, I could see that the structure was also a problem. And so I will say that underlining the people and the structure is understanding. So incongruency of understanding is the reason for the crisis.
For me, it's the people, because when you look at how we think and what we hold as our values, we find out that we really got it wrong. And it's the people that designed the system in any case. So the people, that's where I stand.
David Kunle Agumbiade.
I think it's a very interesting question. It's, for me, it's a case of, is it the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken? But I think I would lean more towards the structure, because when we say Nigerians are the problem, then I have to look outside of Nigeria at the moment, around the world, to see how Nigerians are. And, you know, when we find ourselves in a place where they supposedly have a structure, some way, somehow, we, you know, we fit into the system.
Rita Odumosu.
I voted the people, but like David, I felt it was quite complex, because it's probably 60% the people and 40% the structure.
Ayo.
All right, so I was going with the people, but now when I think about it, I'm switching over to say the structure, because I think if we have the proper structure in place, just like in places in other countries, like in America, if we have the proper structures in place, even you as an individual, if you try to go otherwise, there are consequences for it. So I feel if we have the proper structure in place, it would kind of like align everyone.
Briefly, I would just refer back to what Chief Awolowo said in his book, My Biography, that Nigeria is a mere geographical expression, which was originally used to describe Belgium. For me, I mean, without doubt, I think Kunle was the one who first suggested that. I would say it's the structure. Our problems are structural, it's endemic, and it's not at all the people. If it's going to be the people percentage terms, it's probably 20%, 8% structure. For
Kunle Kasumu.
Okay. For me, Nigeria undoubtedly needs a different structure, but it's the people that will bring about that structure. So for me, my answer is the people, not in terms of genetics, but in terms of values, culture, way of thinking, preferences, and so on. So the people will be my own answer.
Essay, Marcus.
Yeah, I'll go for the structure because as a people, our structure is being determined by external forces. So if we as a people don't have influences or rather determine our structure, there's no way we can move forward. So the people, we don't have any say what type of structure we operate in the country because economically we are still dependent on external agencies.
Adeola?
I would go for the people because basically, if the people change, like the other gentleman says, if the people change their way of thinking and stop being fearful of the other, they'll be able to come together and put a better structure in place.
Tolu?
Yeah, so I mean, I believe that it's a structure. It's just back to the point that you take Nigerians out of Nigeria into a place where there's a proper structure and incentives are put in place properly, they excel and they contribute positively to the society mostly. The people aren't different, it's the structure that's bad.
Temi?
I went for the people because I think regardless of how we are, if there's a structure in place, which I think there is a structure, people manipulate the structure, people are not accountable and they can change things. So I went for the people.
I went for the structure because I think someone has echoed one of my comments that I want to make is that if you take Nigerians out of Nigeria, they tend to do well. So environment matters. The structure in Nigeria for young Nigerians are not giving them the right structure to be empowered. They didn't grow up with the right psyche to go for themselves. The education they are given, it's actually defective, such that we accept everything and we train engineers that cannot do engineering. And we train people to do agricultural science and they can go and do agric.
Jerry?
I had voted for people, and in my intro, you would have had me say that I grew up amongst the main tribal groups in Nigeria, and we lived together in harmony. So I see no reason why other Nigerians cannot live in harmony if there's love.
Esther?
Okay, I'm 100% going to go for this structure because I don't believe that 200 million plus people have generally got a predisposition to indiscipline and disorganization and manipulation, if not for the fact that the structure that is in place that they find themselves having to work with is generally one that was not thought out through from the beginning. And so it's what people find themselves in that will cause that fear and prejudice that will cause people to try and manipulate the system, etc., etc. So yes, I'm definitely going for the structure, not the people.
Yemi Johnson?
Firstly, incentives determine how people behave or respond to a particular situation. Secondly, as Esther said, 120 or 20 million Nigerians can't be totally bad. Maybe we might have 10% at the most. So based on those 2 points, definitely structure.
Okay, George, go ahead.
Having worked in the system, with my background in the military, I've worked in the national and subnational levels, and the privilege of being trained and worked in the United States, it is definitely the structure. The structure is the guardrails that for any system that protects the system and serves the system.
Larry Olaoshun?
The thing is, I was just thinking about this, it's like a chicken and a egg situation. Which one comes first? In Nigeria, I think the people are basically the issues.
Imaswan?
If you ask me, I'd say the problem is definitely the people. Because the structure is hardly permanent. The structure can be changed with a concerted effort. I mean, we have examples of structures being changed. We had the revolution in Cuba. We had the collective efforts of all the former Portuguese colonies in Africa. They changed things for themselves. Unfortunately, we just don't seem to be able to put in the effort collectively.
Wale?
Yeah, although the current structure is not ideal, the main problem is the people, from my point of view. the argument that Nigerians adapt to any foreign environment is purely because they adjust when they go there. So if the people are not really ready to change the structure, which they can do as when they feel like the structure will remain the same.
Kindly.
I think I voted for the people, and the reason I did is because for a system that everyone agrees is defective, there are different actors, people that benefit from the current system, other people that don't benefit, but there seems to be an absence of a collective will to want to change it.
Samson.
I think the structure is wrong. You know, there was no Nigerians before Nigeria was created, and Nigeria was not created structurally sound. So yeah, it makes no sense expecting better from the people of Nigeria when the structure itself for decades has been structurally, not sound. That's my view. So it's the structure that's wrong.
Vivian.
I actually think it's the people. I think it's the mindset of the people. And sometimes I think regardless of what structures are put in place in Nigeria, if the mindset is not changed, I think it will be the same result. I think it's the people.
My take is that it's the people. No matter the structure you put in place, who operates the structure? It's the people. Who creates the structure? The people. So if you have a structure, no matter how beautiful it is, and you have people who cannot run it, we are out. So I go for the people.
Tony Ojulala.
Right. Good evening again. Listen, it's been quite interesting listening to all the speakers before me. If I hadn't lived outside Nigeria for the past 30 years, I probably would have gone with a groundswell of opinion that it's the people of Nigeria that's the problem. When I saw that question, actually, I had no hesitation in choosing the structure. Now, the biggest problem that Nigeria has, in my estimation, is the lack of rule of law. So that's not got anything to do with the people. The difference between most of the countries where we're speaking from tonight is that the rule of law is entrenched. It doesn't, there are good and bad people in Nigeria and all over the world. But where there is a rule of law, people will abide with the system and the structure. So I think it's a red herring worrying about the people. It's the structure, 100%.
Timothy Modu.
Hi, guys. I think it's a structure. And the reason I say that is ordinarily I would have said it's the people. So it's having now unlearning what I've learned about Nigeria and relearning what I ought to learn. I've concluded it is a structure because for 60 years people have tried. So it's got to be the structure. And that's my viewpoint.
Yeah, I think it's the structure. I feel Nigerians are wonderful people, but the structure over time have molded a lot of us to the problems that we have. And if we're still in the same structure, we still get the same kind of problems. So I feel it's the structure. Once the structure is set out right, the Nigerians I know would follow suit.
Austin.
Simple answer to the question is simply the structure. It could never be the people. It's less than 1%. In fact, it's probably 0.01% of the people that has controlled the systems, political systems, whatever systems that we've had in Nigeria till date. To blame. Okay, let's also say 200 million people, 70 million, 150 million, as for the issues, for the problems that Nigeria is facing. I think it's too simplistic. It has to be the structure. And for those who are arguing for it being the people, they keep saying, and actually it's ironic, that when you come to another country, you adjust. What are you adjusting to? You're adjusting to the system in place. So we are people. If you put traffic lights and there are monitors to monitor what you are doing, if you beat the traffic lights, you will obey it.
Ainde, I don't think we've heard you.
It's a tricky question because it's a bit of both, really. But if we have to see things in the context of where we are and how to move forward, undoubtedly, what we have to draw from is the people's capacity to self-determine. Granted, we have a bad structure, but the capacity to have interfered very, very intelligently to make an adjustment, that boils down to the capacity of the people. And now we've gotten to a place of helplessness and confusion, which has affected the culture in general, is affected values and belief. So the only way out for us is to actually build the capacity for self-determining. I chose structure because culture and values and beliefs is part of culture. It's part of structure, I beg your pardon.
Carlos Ifekoya.
Comrades, without any thought, it has to be the people, because any structure, standards, systems, whatever we come up with, come from the people. As I see it, we have very poor governance in place, and with poor governance, whatever laws or decrees you make are not going to be enforced. So ultimately, it boils down to the people.
We take Dr. Gabriel from Australia.
Hello to everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Brilliant. Just obviously, I do apologise. I'm joining a bit late, but as far as I'm concerned, I think we're dealing with a structure here, not the people. And the reason I say is I've worked with a lot of Nigerians, both in the country and abroad, and I know there's a local mentality when they're within the country. But the honest truth is, the same Nigerians outside seem to excel and excel pretty well. So, but you need to have the opportunity to excel. I don't think we have that. As we know, yes, everything's been set up to fail. For me, it's the structure. That is, it's a complex structure. It's got the external and the internal side of it. It's really complex. And I agree with Ayinde in the point of you need significant capacity and intelligence to work it out, but it's the structure.
Did you go ahead?
I think it's the structure that the problem is. From amalgamation, the country has set up incentive systems that self-reinforces, so that we have now created overlords that don't want to leave the system to thrive. The people are not the problem. It is the structures and the incentives in the system that has caused people not to obey the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shall we try Pamela again? Pamela, I've got you on 2 screens. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry with all the technical problems. I'll begin with a brief introduction. My name is Pamela Ibe. I'm Igbo, and I'm a lawyer. I'm an assistant district attorney in Texas. I voted the structure, and I totally agree that if the right structure is in place, over time, people will conform. There's not even an if, but, or maybe. If the right structures are in place, they will conform. We might need a few good people to get things going, but over time, if the right structures are in place, you human beings usually have no choices in these types of things. And I'll also emphasize something someone else had said. The rule of law is the key to everything. If we all agree that the rule of law is the basis of the societies that work, we have to have that. No one can be above the law.
Now we have Professor Olumide Joshi with us.
Yeah, I think it's a chicken and egg situation, if you ask me. I think the structure was created by people. People leave Nigeria and excel in different structures. So if you ask me, I think it's a structure. It's going to take the people, right, to create a better structure. But it's the structure that is a problem.
From Sheun Kolade.
Right. Okay. I mean, I think going back to the question is about what is the problem, and I would argue that the problem is the structure. I would also say that the solution is the people. But the question is about what is the problem, and the problem is the structure, because I mean the structure is what incentivizes people is what shapes their attitude and the way they approach things. And I think certainly in Nigeria today, the problem is the structure. And I think the point has been made already about the fact that Nigerians go outside the country and they thrive and they do so well. So definitely structure for me.
Olu?
Yeah, I agree. It's the structure. The structure of the country is actually faulty. And that's why we have this bad leadership and corruption. Also, of course, the people is also important because they are the ones that will implement things. But I think the structure is really faulty, and with a faulty structure, it's difficult to actually progress in the country.
For me, it's the people. The people, because the country Nigeria is over 100 years now. I'm wondering why we have not changed the structure. So for me, it's the people, because the people run the structure and the people make the structure. So the willpower to engineer the kind of change that will move us forward is what is lacking right now. So for me, it's the people.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I've been listening to everybody, and I want to say primarily, I believe it's the people. I often find it so heartbreaking and disappointing that the system is so difficult. The reason why structures work so well in other countries is because they uphold it. They, the people, uphold it. The people put the structures in place. We make choices even though we know they are bad. Choices that we will not make when we're in other countries where structures work. But when we get to Nigeria, we make those choices and then we complain.
Olas, please go ahead, Bola.
Yeah, I'm going to say the people, because I think the people create the structure anyway. And I just think the orientation and our mentality needs to change. We need to change the norm. We need to retrain, we need to remold to be able to run the structure appropriately. That's my view.
Yemi here. My view is the structure, because people are not born bad. The people are a product of a broken structure. They've never had the opportunity of sitting down and defining what and how they want to live. And unfortunately, the structure as it is now protects the weak at the expense of the strong. So I'll go for the structure.
Which side am I going on? I wonder if you know. Well, I think maybe we didn't define the question carefully enough, because an important part of the structure is the fact of a union of 371 ethnic groups, ancient ethnic groups, trying to be one. So when you're dealing with a structure, and a recurring point is the people who put the structure there. But I think the point that I try to make in Fatherless is that we didn't put it there. This is a structure that we came into. And so therefore, I'm definitely of the view that it's the structure. But there are issues arising. I mean, can we get the poll results? We did take a poll before you all started speaking. Bonny, can you tell us the poll results?
Okay, I'll end the poll. Okay, and I'll share the results now.
Wow, that's a dead heat. That's like Brexit. Versus 48%.
It's the Brexit poll.
That's a Brexit poll.
Exactly like Brexit.
That is incredible. Wow. What is the problem with us? 48% say it's the people, and 52% say it's the structure. I think we have to follow the British precedent, don't we? Even a 4% victory means that those of us who are structuralites have carried the day. I think that's how democracy works. So congratulate yourself, those on the structure, who took the position on the structure. Now let's just see some of the comments that came through on the chat that may inform and fire up some more discussion. Let's see. Jerry said the rule of law is going to be observed and operated by the people. Rule of law has nothing to do with structure, does it? Well, I'm sure somebody would like to come back on that. Whoever said emphasize the rule of law, I think it was Pamela. Let's go to the next one. This was Deola. She said, the people will need to change. Who puts the structure together and who will run the structure to make it work? Okay, that's a point. Ishaoluwa said, Nigerians excel outside of Nigeria. Now, those of you who said is the people need to address that question. Why is it, if it's the people, why is it that Nigerians outside Nigeria perform so highly and well? Let me just scroll down. Wale said, to support my choice of the people, I would like to remind us of the common attitude of Nigerian on any flight going to Nigeria. Immediately they sense that the flight is about to land, they get blood rush to disembark. The same people will not act the same way if the flight is into any other country. Controversial. I'm sure there'll be rejoinders and responses to that. Ishaoluwa said, because the elite in those countries uphold the rule of law in those countries, we have the worst elite in the world. They will subvert and bend every law to suit their selfish purposes. Ask Nigerians and the British to exchange their respective countries. Within 5 years, the British will change the Nigerian landscape, while the UK would have degenerated within the same period under the Nigerians. Oh dear, oh dear. Right, there's going to be fiery discussions, I suspect, coming on. Professor Joshi said, problem, I would argue it would be the people if the right structure is in place and the people still underperform. Give us a structure and then see us how we perform, is what he's saying. Sheon Kolade said, the problem is the structure, the solution is the people. I like that expression. The current structure of the Nigerian state incentivizes the wrong kinds of attitudes and values that have grown increasingly worse over the years. There is not much people can do with the current structure. Once the right structure is in place, people can function productively and effectively. Yemi Johnson said, the people did not create the structure. The structure was imposed on them by the few elites. Jerry says, who builds the structure? Oh, we've had Jerry many times here. People. Who upholds the rule of law? The people. Deola, Austin said, Adeola, the people did not set up the system or structure. It was imposed on them. Bola Kosoko said, the people created the structure. We need to change our orientation, mentality, retrain, remold to change the structure. Austin said, it is like saying that we created the constitution of Nigeria. No one Muslim did and imposed it on us. No, I think it's, I should read, no one Muslim did and imposed it upon us. Deola, please define the good structure that needs to be in place for good governance and who puts that in place. Lalu said, I once believed that the Nigerian people are the problem. Then I worked in Accenture Lagos office and I saw Nigeria worked with dignity and class. The structure in the Lagos office gave us a guardrail to work professionally. Developed society have systems, structure in place that set guardrails, and it is enforced. Otumba Dele Ogun said, absolutely a country that was built on faulty foundations without the mutual consent of all is unsustainable and not fit for purpose. Our traditional societies were on strong, accountable structure with a system of checks and balances, none of which is effective with our current dysfunctional structure. And this said, going forward from here, it is upon the people that we will have to depend. Pamela said, upholding the rule of law is part of the structure, has everything to do with it. Sam Jacobs, structure is a broad stroke. It is poverty, it is illiteracy, it is corruption, it is religion, it is culture, it is superstitious belief, and on and on. But I wonder if those are not symptoms of a problem rather than a problem itself. Dele Ogun, we've heard of him. Ours is a country that is a mere geographical expression. As Awolowo said, a phrase originally used to describe Belgium. We made to believe that ours is a federation, when the system as it is practiced in other federal systems is unlike what obtains in Nigeria. Sam Jacobs said, life is not Boolean, it's a mixed bag. Many of our people are not enlightened. Our leaders that are enlightened are corrupt. Kunle Kasumu said that people must understand there is a problem with the structure. The people must accept there is a need for change in the structure. The people must be willing to change the structure. The people must change the structure. The people must implement the new structure, the rule of law. It is the people that must establish a society where the law rules. It all comes down to the structure. We're genetically fine, but I think it has to change, or the structure and consequently the country will not change. It all comes down to the people. I think we've got a flavor of that. You could all go through the comments as well, but of those who said the people, they need to respond to that question. How comes Nigerians perform in other terrains? How comes? Who wants to volunteer? Those who said the people, anyone? Hands up. No hiding now. You said the people. McDonald.
It is the people, because if you look at what has happened in the last 60 years, you'll find out that things have continuously degenerated. And so if you lived in Nigeria 40 years ago, and some of us would have been infants, very young 40 years ago, you go back and you find out that things have become worse. Now, if you say that is just the structure, without also looking at the people, you would not be able to change anything. But if you say the people are also responsible, then there is a good chance that you'll be able to change the structure. To say it is the structure is to have an excuse. To say it's the people is to begin to do something to change the structure.
Anyone who said structure who wants to respond to that?
Yes, can I say my name is Ishel Oluwabiodun Johnson.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, let me just cite a very good example. Dubai has one of the best police in the world. Do you know why it works? They enforce the law. They enforce the law. Nigerians who go there will play by the rules because they know the law is enforced. Come over down here, back to Nigeria. People know the law is not enforced, so they do what they please. So it is not Nigerians excel outside Nigeria because they know that the people over there enforce their laws, and Nigeria is anyhowness. That's the term that people use.
I love the go, Dele.
Who's that?
Yemi Johnson.
Yemi, go ahead.
Yeah, I think in financial services, where we've looked at regulatory failures in the past, we understand that incentives, which are structurally driven, determines how people behave. So if people are given the right incentives, so for example, in a sales role, if they're incentivized to treat the customers unfairly to achieve their bonus, people will react to the incentive that is given to them. And that's because incentives are structurally driven. And it's the same way with people. If the right incentive, structurally driven, is in place, people will respond. We are determined primarily by the incentives.
Leave that. Can I come in, Dele, Tony? Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
I'm going to give an example. In the time I've lived in this country, in England, there's one particular abiding example that I really would like to share with everybody. There's a gentleman in this country called Jeffrey Archer. He's a novelist as far as we Nigerians are concerned. but in Britain, he's actually a lord, friend of the Prime Minister, and at Christmas, people are always at his house, hobnobbing and doing whatnot. Now, this man was in court many years ago and perjured in the court, got away with it. 4 years down the line, it became transparent that that's what he had done. He was brought back to court and he was sentenced and sent to jail. A lord. Now, in Nigeria, in all my life, and I'm 55 now, I've never heard of anybody in government who has stolen money or misappropriated money or mismanaged anything that's gone to court or been jailed for anything. This is what I mean by, we say we have rule of law. Do we really?
The point was touched on about the Constitution. Surely the Constitution is the foundational document of any society. And the question I think Tim raised was whether the Constitution that we have, by way of its design, I don't know how many on this platform have actually looked at the Constitution, whether by way of its design, in the context of 371 ethnic groups, speaks to each and every one of those ethnic groups such that they can perform to their best. That is a structure issue.
Correct. Dele, can I respond to Ositus, please?
George, go ahead.
Yeah. The arguments about enforcing the law, who are those who are going to enforce the law? The people. The way the police today is constituted is faulty. It has to be restructured. You have a federal police where you have states, and states make law. And the federal police, as structured today, cannot enforce laws along all the lines within the federation and the subnational levels. So looking at it from that banal point, what I'm saying is the structure of a lot of the institutions that need to enforce the laws or drive the country is essentially faulty. The structure is wrong, absolutely wrong.
Correct.
Thank you. Professor Joseph.
We need to separate the people from the elite. And that, to me, that's number one. If you know, the elites created the structure, and the structure shaped the behavior, the values, thinking of the people. The American Constitution was written by elites, created a structure that allowed the people to thrive. So, you know, we have to understand, when we say the people, in our mind, we're talking about the masses, not elites. But elites have created a structure that, you know, is perverse and has created incentives that, you know, weighs down the people. But ultimately, people have to fight, right? You know, to take their rights back.
Tim, go ahead.
Without complicating things here, the experience of the Biafran War must not escape us when we talk about the structure and the people. So a group of people says we've had enough. Where there is a system and the structure was right, and they have the right for self-determination, there could have been a case for that to happen. So the structure that was faulty did not allow people who decided that they've had enough, they want to leave the system, couldn't leave. Even now, there is no system that will allow any section of Nigeria who wants to leave the system to leave. Now, the reason I'm bringing the idea of leaving is to test a good structure. It's a structure where that becomes a viable option. And then it can then make people to say, if you want me to stay, then we can work together. But the structure currently doesn't allow even anyone who wants to leave the system to leave the system.
Laulu.
Yes, I think I want to add some points to the fact that, as Professor said, there is the elite and there is the governed. And unless we have the critical mass of good elites to change the structure, the government cannot do that. If you look at the civilized society like UK, US, There is a critical mass of the elite that changed it. The masses were just there. They were reacting to the leadership being set by those elites. What we've lacked in Nigeria is the critical mass of good elite that could go into governance, into the bureaucracy, into the civil servant, and set the right tone for the people. And the masses cannot change the system. They can do mob action, but they will have to be led by a rabble-rousing. We need good leaders to change the system. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick point. It seems to me as if Nigeria itself is a case study for this question. And somebody had mentioned about the individuals that were, I'm not going to use the word complicit, but they were actors, right, in the First Republic. This is a country where the regional system in the late 50s and early 60s resulted in the same people who are not performing today in performance at that point in time. So look at the structure, the regional structure, and look at the structure, the same people, right? They perform well under one structure, not performing under another structure. That itself, in my mind, is a case study that says that, with the right structure, people will deliver.
Can I add to that?
Who said that?
Yeah, this is Sharon Kolade. Just a quick one.
Go ahead.
I think there has been a few comments there about rule of law, about system. I think it's important for us to understand that when we talk about structure, we shouldn't reduce it to just a matter of specific laws. The question of structure is more fundamental, it's more foundational, and it goes to the heart of the agency of constituent peoples, the ethnic groups that make up the nation state, about their ability to make decisions about their own future, about their resources. That is the fundamental issue about structure. And that is why the structure is a problem in Nigeria. Yeah. It's not about whether there are some good laws there and there. It's that, the individual ethnic groups, this agency has been taken away from them by this all-powerful behemoth center. And I think we need to keep that in mind, that is what the structural issue is about.
Okay, thank you. Kule, you said you wanted to ask a question.
At every point in time in our history, when we have had an opportunity to change the structure of Nigeria, why did we not? Whether it's the Civil War, whether it's the more recent times, June 12, the dates, we can keep churning out the dates. Why is it that at every point in time, when we've had immense opportunities to change the structure of Nigeria, we did not? That's why I keep getting back to the point that as much as it's expedient to change the structure of Nigeria, the people have not changed. If we keep saying it's the British, and of course, definitely the British has a huge chunk of the problem here. But the British left in 1960. We've had chances to change that structure, but we don't change the structure. That leads me back to the need for our people, whether it's the masses or the elites, to change the way we think, not individually but collectively.
We got the point. Can I suggest this answer? When you have a structure for a country embracing 371 ethnic groups, each of whom had their system before they were put in the sack, and the structure of your country is on the basis of winner takes all. When that winner gets that power, the name of the game means to hold it at all costs. So all the opportunities that we may refer to as opportunities to change the structure presupposes that the winner from the existing structure has a desire to join in with the rest of the losers who want to change the structure. We have a winner-takes-all system for a country with 371 ethnic groups. That is the heart of the structural problem, as against what I call the unity of the orange, where each segment of the orange that makes the whole is sitting comfortably next to each other, each as we were. Let's keep this in mind. Those 371 ethnic groups were in the same territorial space before they were put in the sack, same sack by the British. But there was no, at that point, a desire to get on top of one another. We were side by side. Then we have a structure that puts one on top or two on top in partnership, and the rest are losers. That is the structural problem. And to change it, you're right, is the people that must change it, ultimately. But we must bear in mind that every system produces winners and losers. And the winners of a structure, just like in apartheid South Africa, had no desire to change the structure until circumstances were such that they faced the possibility of losing everything. I think that's the answer to the question. Why have we not been able to change it? Dr. Eke, are you still with us?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Let me just say, it's a tough debate, and obviously, the issue of the people is quite valid. But in reality, what the people actually do is they come in as part of the solution. Now, if you look at the structure, just as Dele has said, look, the structure is historic. It's not just something that started in 1960. It was a historic structure that was set up. And I heard someone say the British left in they did not live in 1960. Listen, you see, I want us to understand the people have an issue, okay? When they were all mixed up and jumbled up in a fighting situation. Then you have the corrupt group or elite, you want to call them, okay? But you also have the external factor, the CIA, the Americans, the British, the people manhandling the oil production, which was the bulk of the economy, okay? The big companies holding that oil. This is not, the problem was, it was made in a way so that even if you fight and kill 3.5 million people or whatever in the Biafran thing, or you try to do a proper election, they always had a way of intervening. We need to educate our people, there's no question, but that's part of the solution. That's not these same people lived very well for thousands of years, but suddenly you have a colonial problem that is still going on. And if you trace it carefully, you find out that there's a colonial problem that is still ongoing as we speak. And that's why the different ethnic groups or the different nations cannot even determine themselves. They can't even, so we're all in that jumble. So the structure was set to fail woefully.
Thank you.
And you can kill 10 million people, but if you don't look at that structure carefully and understand it, and then we can start working to change it, it's a failure.
Can I toss this in as well for those who say it's the people? Because there's a suggestion and an implication that our people are different from people elsewhere. Now, those who live in America, in England, in Australia, know that there are speed cameras on every road. I think we also know that on the roads where there are no speed cameras, where there's the same speed limit, the natives, the indigens, the Oyinbo, they will break those speed limits because there's no camera watching them. But where there's a camera, then they now abide by the rules. I would like to suggest that that has a bearing on the argument that we are somehow different. My submission is that all people are the same. If the structure is right, it conforms the conduct of the people. If the structure is wrong, it licenses the misconduct of the same people. So I would like to throw that into the discussions. Are we really saying that we are different? Professor Ejoshi?
This is what I'm going to say, right? The structure in my mind has two sides. There's a formal structure and there's the informal structure. The formal structure, the values, norms, and the behavior of the people. The formal structure creates incentives, and those incentives create an informal structure, which is the way the people behave and the way the people think. It's a stretch to expect people to change behaviors, the values, and the norms, right? If formal structure is not providing incentives for them to make that change. That is why in Britain and America, people are careful, they're speeding, because they know the structure has put in place incentives that if they're caught speeding, they're going to get a ticket. And they're going to get points of their license, they're going to have to pay a lot of money, right? So in reality, right, the structure creates people. If you want the right people to behave in a particular way, put in a structure that's going to create incentives and it's going to make them behave the way you want.
I've been, as I said, I supported the idea that the structure was the case here. And when I look at other countries around the world that are actually a federal system, I see that the way those countries operate are much more better in tune to the constituent units than is the case in Nigeria. I mean, a perfect example I usually use whenever I'm discussing such issues is nobody knows the president of Switzerland. I can't even, if anybody asks me who the president of Switzerland is, you can't even tell me who that person is. And that's a system which works very, very well, irrespective of the differences between the cantons. Germany has a similar system as well. I mean, we know who the chancellor is, but the larger states have very, very powerful powers and competencies, which allows them to function very well. And we've seen with the developments with COVID-19 how they've responded very well, how countries that actually have proper federal systems in place or operated very well in dealing with the situation at hand, unlike what's obtained in Nigeria with our weak institutions at the state and local levels, which have been as a result of an overbearing federal power structure in Abuja.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I add something? Larry Laushun. When we're talking in Nigeria, it's a very complex situation. For instance, the Nigerian constitution says that if you lived in an area for less than 6 months, more than 6 months, you have the right for everything in that area. But still, if you're applying for a federal appointment, a federal job in Nigeria, they will still be asking you for the local government you come from the state you come from. So what is the point in that? That is one thing. Secondly, you have a governor, which is the chief security officer of a state, and you have a commissioner of police, which is answerable to the inspector general of police. So how do you comprehend? You see, and the third one I want to say is that when in anywhere there is corruption everywhere, but in Nigeria is so impeded in that the election, you run for 4 years. If you have a proper system, and this is why I think people have problems. If you have a proper system, if you have a good governor for 4 years, if you perform, you go for another governor 4 years. But in the system of rigging, but you don't rig, you need the people around you to rig. Because I've seen areas, the period where people want to rig and the society rebutted that rigging. But you have the area boss, you have everybody. So everything is compounded. And that is why sometimes you cannot separate the people from the system.
Thank you.
Yes, I've listened carefully for the few minutes that I've listened to the debate. And then talking about Nigeria, I've always believed that it's not so much about structure or the people. Leadership is always a small, it's always a small percentage. There's this idiom that says that he that wears the ring of power must walk alone. And that is usually what determines how a system is. A system is shaped by structure. Sorry, it's shaped by power. So it's all about the power clique, and the group that will hold this power will always be small. I do not believe that the problem is Nigeria in its multiplicity of ethnicities. It is actually because of the way the group that has held power. And power is never given, it is taken. So the real discussion here, if we want to look at the Nigerian state or the challenge of the Nigerian system, is to look at the various components, the various sub-systems that make up the structure. Why? Because every single element of society is a microcosm of what the leadership makes of the rest of it. So the challenge here is not so much about structure or the people. The people will never be able to change the structure if power resides in the hand of a wrong percentage or a wrong quadrant of the people. Because the structure we're talking about here is not about what the British left. It's a false narrative actually to say that all this while we've been existing peacefully, coexisting peacefully. No, even from the part of Nigeria where I come and from my own family history, I know that there were, little intertribal wars, as it were, between us and neighboring societies, neighboring ethnicities, not even just within the system itself. So if we want to take a stand, I didn't join at the point at which we had to either choose between structure or the people.
Austin.
Yes, I have been raising my hand for quite some time. My position on this is that if you have a system that was imposed on us, we have to understand we need to define the parameters upon which we are having this debate. First of all, who is the people? Who imposed the structure? Was it the people? It's never been the people. Foreigners came and imposed the structure on us. They skewed it. The system we have is designed to fail. It cannot produce anybody. It cannot produce any good leader. All of us here, with due respect, if you are operating with the Nigerian structure and system the way it is today, you will fail. Even Obasanjo, with all his strength and everything that he was attempting to do one way or the other, didn't really succeed. And what we need to, we just have to appreciate the fact that, number one, for example, I know we've talked about it, the constitution we have is not our constitution. And in any case, even as skewed as that constitution is, it's been observed more in breach by every government in power. And so we don't have a workable system that will produce the best for Nigerians. We have more of a neo-colonialist structure. We have a system where we have okay. Anyway, my position is simply that we don't have a right system in place anymore.
We could talk all night on these issues. But I think we've had a chance to share. Are you saying you haven't had a chance to say whether your views have changed?
No, I have not.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, and it's a very quick one. My view, of course, remains the same. But I think there are just a few things I wanted to just also comment on. There was a comment about whether, we need a perfect structure in Nigeria. I think we're not talking about a perfect structure. We are talking about a functional structure. That is the structure that works. That is what it's about. There are no perfect structures anywhere, not in the UK, nor anywhere else. The problem with the Nigerian structure is that it is not functional. It is not working. And I think we need to keep that in mind. There was also something about, whether we should just coexist in peace. I think coexisting is a noble sentiment. But you cannot, a man cannot coexist in the same community with another man who decides for him that he can only see his wife one day a week, for example. And that is an analogy that actually, explains what is happening in Nigeria, where the center is making, decisions for constituent peoples that they should make for themselves. That is a problem. You cannot coexist in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
But I will just save the rest of it because of time. But I think I wanted to speak to the last thing was about Brexit. Brexit could not have happened with the wrong kind of structure. Brexit happened because of the structure that exists in the UK. The same structure that allowed the Scottish to vote for a referendum a few years ago. And that is the issue. You know, the structure is just not there. It's not working in the country.
Okay, thank you very much. Guys, my internet is screaming, saying, look, I'm tired. These Nigerians will go forever. And but it's been a fantastic evening, a surrogate for the real thing, because the real thing, we were supposed to be face to face, and we would have been talking all night long on these issues to thrash out. But it's the beginning, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of you for making the time and to make it such an engaging and interesting and informative discussion. Those that the structure people, did win the votes, even though by a margin of only 52 votes to 48. So congratulations to the structuralists, and that says that it means that there is hope. Because once you can, if the problem is the structure, it is solvable. If the problem is the people, you're stuck with the people. You've got a real problem. So on that positive and encouraging note, I want to thank you all again. See you back on the platform. I'm sure it's a 24/7 platform. There's no platform like ours, the gathering of minds, the quality of intellect, the depth of reasoning that comes from our platform. This is why I'm strict with people as far as jokes, etc. We will not do jokes. We will not do frivolous comments. We are a serious platform, and if we carry on like this, we, the people, will solve the structural problem. That is our agenda, and as soon as we can get the conference on, we will, so that we can talk all night and really get to know each other properly. It's a great team building. I want to thank Mr. Bonny Uba for controlling the technology. He's the one that set this stuff up. I want to thank Dele Ogun, who seems to have gone to bed some time ago, who set up the whole system that we had. I certainly believe that it's not we the people, because if our lot were in power, that shit wouldn't be happening. So on that happy note, I want to say good night to all of you and see you back on the platform.
Can we all wave, please? Can we all wave for night? Night, night, everybody. Good night, Dele. Good night, all. Good night. All right. Yeah, good night. Good night. Bye, all.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.